It doesn't matter if you are a person of color or come from an underrepresented or marginalized community, or someone who's affluent and has more privilege and more access. Most victims and survivors have experienced erasure and not feeling or seeing systems be responsive to the harm that they've experienced. When it's a one size fits all, it's actually a one size fits none.
We know that only 1 in 10 victims of violent crime ever access victim services. We also know that out of all of the victims that are able to access services, only 4% report that their needs were met.
Why do so few survivors of violence get the care they need? In this video, we'll explore the barriers that keep care out of reach and how the Trauma Recovery Center model is transforming what healing looks like in our communities.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to prevent harm from happening in my family. I lost immediate family members to gun violence. And then I myself experienced, abuse of different forms. And it changes you forever, and it can be debilitating. On a molecular level, if you know anything about trauma, that's what it does to you. It literally changes your DNA. It interrupts your genetic cycle, your thinking, your response. And I've seen that grief and that trauma, the lack of support, individually, at an individual level, what it has done, the outcomes that it's produced.
I remember going through that experiences of recovering on my mother's one-bedroom apartment on her old couch, suffering from these 2 gunshot wounds, and just going through a lot of PTSD, a lot of anxiety. I used to wake up in the middle of the night having flashbacks and nightmares. It was just going through a deep period of stress and depression, also paranoia as well.
We know that victims of violent crime have many barriers. One of the main barriers is that across the United States, most states have the requirement that if the state and federal government are going to give a victim entitlements, that they must file a police report. And we know that in many communities, the victim is afraid of filing a police report. They're either afraid because of retaliation from the perpetrator, or they're just not comfortable in talking with the police.
Most crime victims do not know about victim services or where they can go to get help. I did not know about the victim compensation program or know about victim services until I joined this organization 6 years after being a victim of gun violence. There are other barriers that exist, including in some states, if you are on probation or parole, or if you have a felony conviction, you may not be eligible for the victim compensation program.
In most models of care, survivors are handed a list of referrals and left to navigate a maze of confusing systems on their own. Each service, mental health, housing, legal support, financial assistance, often exists in a separate agency with its own intake forms, eligibility rules, and wait lists. For someone in the middle of grief, trauma, or fear, this patchwork approach can feel impossible to navigate. The burden falls on the survivor to make the system work, rather than on the system to meet the survivor's needs.
There's no way to gauge how long it takes to recover or repair your life, your physical and emotional well-being after you've been a victim of a crime. What made it harder was having multiple different agencies to communicate with. What I did not need was to be handed off to and deal with multiple agencies with multiple different processes, multiple expectations, right, to be able to respond to what was happening in my life in the moment. To have other entities determine whether or not you are a victim and whether or not you meet eligibility as a victim to get support. To have to go through systems where you may have to front your own expenses and capital and then try to prove how this has impacted you so you can be financially reimbursed or receive compensation at a time where you are probably the most disconnected and dissociated, or your family is more destabilized than it ever has been, to then have, be expected, right, to be present and aware and be able to manage all of these things, including your own harm. It's just unreasonable. It's unreasonable, and it does more harm than good.
Also, in many states, a victim may be eligible for victim restitution funds, but in order to do that, they have to file and complete an application. And the application is cumbersome. It includes filing a police report. It includes submitting tax returns. It includes submitting proof of lost wages. It includes submitting medical bills. And when you think about it, when you think about someone, I'm thinking of one of our TRC clients, Maria. She was married and had 2 children at home. And her husband was coming home from work, and he was shot and killed during a robbery. And this left Maria with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and alone. And now we're going to ask Maria, who could barely get out of bed in the morning, to fill out an application for entitlements. And so the TRC model was created with Maria in mind. How can we remove barriers to care?
Access to healing services shouldn't depend on who you are, where you live, or what systems you're willing to engage. The Trauma Recovery Center model was created to offer survivors the care they deserve and need on their own terms.
The Trauma Recovery Center is a restorative space for survivors to heal and recover. It is a multidisciplinary team of professionals who just surround a survivor with the support that they need to be well. And that's what I see Trauma Recovery Centers as accomplishing, is just being that space where a survivor can go. They don't have to go anywhere else. They get the support that they actually need.
So this being a one-stop, a safe space where folks didn't need to go and get their victimization substantiated by the police through a report, or that needed to go through some system of getting a referral to a referral to a referral, that they could actually just come in, walk through the door and say, I need support, and that there was a menu of options for them to choose from. Just really sat well with me.
TRCs provide free evidence-based mental health services for the emotional and physical effects of trauma, as well as case management and practical support to help survivors get their needs for food, shelter, transportation, childcare, and more met. Instead of handing people a list of referrals, TRCs offer one trusted point of contact. A single team provides both emotional support and help with practical needs. Survivors do not have to figure out where to go because support comes to them. Assertive outreach ensures care reaches people who are isolated, afraid, or overwhelmed. Once a survivor is engaged with the TRC, staff use proactive outreach to maintain connection and ensure continued access to care. This means TRC staff meet people where they are and offer support in places that feel safe and accessible, whether that's in their homes, at a library, a school, a trusted community space, or online. TRC staff also help clients apply for victim compensation and navigate complex systems. They offer step-by-step support to people facing grief, language barriers, and bureaucratic challenges. There are no disqualifications based on parole or probation status. TRCs are not embedded in law enforcement or the criminal justice system. This allows TRCs to support people who do not feel safe accessing those systems or who need time to stabilize and decide for themselves whether and how to engage. Providing that choice and control is a core part of trauma-informed care. By removing systemic hurdles and restoring agency to survivors, TRCs offer a path to healing that survivors can actually access and trust.
So when I heard about the Trauma Recovery Center model, I just think about these are the things I wish would have been in place for me. And when I talk to so many survivors across the country, they say the same thing. I wish I'd have had a trauma recovery center in my community. I wish my parents would have had a trauma recovery center. I wish my grandparents, I wish our communities would have had a trauma recovery center, because we could have helped so many people heal, but also we could have prevented a lot of violence from happening. Every community needs a trauma recovery center.
I think the beliefs that I might have changed the most was that healing is possible. Like true healing is possible. Like we don't have to keep putting Band-Aids on things. Like we can actually help people to heal from the experience of trauma. And I think what has changed my beliefs is just having this model and watching people's lives change, and not just for the moment. Years later, like they come back, they call me and they let me know what they're doing and how they're doing. And so to watch individuals in such a short period of time, that's the main thing, right? To watch them blossom into new people, to watch their lives change. It is so rewarding to do this work.